Gemara Chatzima Tova. You may not realize it, but in our tradition, Yom Kippur is actually considered the happiest day of the year. Now, it may not feel that way because many of us are fasting, and as the day grows on, we may not feel weak right now. In fact, we probably feel the strongest that we are going to feel all day because of the large meals that we ate tonight. We're going to find ourselves growing frailer, weaker. We're going to get in touch with our humanity, and we're going to face things about ourselves, things that we wish that we could change, things that we wish could be different. And that's not easy. But in our tradition, Yom Kippur is the day that God forgave the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf. And that idea that on Yom Kippur we finally reach a kind of personal redemption. We finally find restitution for the things that we did wrong is actually a joyous feeling. In a way, you can think of it almost like a sports game. I was a collegiate swimmer, for those who don't know. And I have to say that when I finished the season and had put the work in, no race was ever not painful, but the end races that I was ready for, even with the challenge, was usually a lot of fun. It was usually joyful. If we've done the work these past first month and then 10 days to apologize to those who we've hurt, to make amends, to make a new plan for our lives, that even with the challenge that comes Yom Kippur, it can actually be pretty fun. Yom Kippur leaves us with that feeling that I liken when I talk to people, of that feeling when you run your tongue across your teeth at the end of a dentist appointment. And finally, you get that cleanness for a short period of time until you go and mess it up. Well, that is the essence of Yom Kippur. To have done the work to cleanse our soul, to go into the year afresh and anew. And nothing could be more fun, nothing could be more joyous, which is the reason that you're going to find tonight, though having many solemn melodies will not feel like a dirge. Tonight, feel free to sing. Feel free to clap your hands. Feel free to have fun. Feel free to smile a little bit. Because finding forgiveness, both of yourself and with others and with God, is actually something to celebrate. So now a few logistical announcements. Hopefully everyone grabbed a prayer book on their way in. If you need anything tonight, you can find our ushers. If you need large print prayer books, they're right as you walk in. Same with hearing-assisted devices. Bathrooms are outside to the right, though all gender and handicap-accessible bathrooms are through the office toward the back. If for any reason we need an emergency exit tonight, of course there's the exit you came in, but notice there's exits scattered throughout the room as well. And a challenging note, there have been a series, unfortunately, of bomb threats called into synagogues, all false, over the course of this High Holy Day season. In fact, one being a synagogue that was only about 15 or 20 miles away. If for some reason something like that happens, just heed our call. We've actually talked to the police, and we know exactly what to do. And so even if it feels counterintuitive to what you think, follow us, follow our directions, and they actually told us the safest thing is to stay in the room and keep going with the service. So with that, I just want to invite everybody to do your best with services, to follow along to the best of your ability, knowing that some of you speak Hebrew and some of you don't. Some of you have been coming for years and some of you haven't. Some of you know the melodies and some of you don't. And don't be shy about turning to a neighbor and asking for help. And don't be shy about just humming along or clapping along as well. If you're here with your families for our family service, the custom here is to begin all in this room, to listen to the Kol Nidre prayer, the haunting melody of Kol Nidre, and then when we finish with that ritual, to peel off into the chapel and let you continue with your family service. So with that, we're going to move into our candle lighting tonight, and we're going to begin on page 9. And if I missed her, though I don't think I did, I'm sure Shirley Colbert is kind of, the rain probably slowed her down, so I will read a reading on page number 9. We join responsively. The human spirit is the lamp of God together, guided by the flame of conscience.
In the sacred night we search for truth.
Shine your light upon us as we strive to serve you.
May we find safety in your faithful love.
We light the flame of healing and forgiveness.
We give thanks for love.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tivanu להדליק נר של יום הכיפורים.
Together we join in these words of sacred and joyous firsts.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. We turn to page 16 and we rise together, Or Zarua, as we prepare to take out our scrolls. Uyishrei, Uyishrei. For with you is the source of light. For with you is the source of light. For with you is the source of light.
In your light we see light. For with you is the source of light. For with you is the source of light. For with you is the source of light. In your light we see light. Oh, Zarua.
Zarua.
Latzadi. Latzadi. Ulishrei, ulishrei, ulishrei le.
In a moment, we're going to move toward hearing that melody, perhaps one of the most familiar melodies in all of the Jewish melodic canon, that of the Kol Nidre prayer. Now, as we do, I want to just say why this prayer has captured the hearts and minds, so much so that we name tonight after the prayer itself. In our tradition, the third commandment, asking that we do not take God's name in vain, is directly tied to the notion of oaths. When in the ancient world we would say an oath, we would swear on God's name. And in our tradition, when God uttered that commandment, it became so important that the whole world shook, because keeping promises has divine import. But we also know that if we didn't make audacious promises, the world would never move forward. We would never be able to affect the kind of change in our personal lives and in our outside world that we want. And so every year, we have a fail-safe. We have a prayer that we say that allows us to aim high and to fall short. And that is what this prayer is. So every time we hear this prayer, it's not only a relief that we did fall short and that we are not held accountable, but it's a challenge to us to be audacious this year, knowing that we will be back in these seats next year to hear this haunting melody again. With one voice assembled, sages past and present declare, all may pray as one on this night of repentance. Let none be excluded from our community of prayer. With one voice, God and congregation proclaim, all may pray as one on this day of return. Let all find a place in this sacred assembly. We'll join together on the third time through.
Kol Nidre ve'sarei v'charanei v'konamei v'chiduyei v'kirusei ushivu ushivut dinidarna udishtabana udayacharimna vida'asarna al nafshata השרירים ולא קיימים. נדרנה לא אסרי ושבתנה לא שבות. Kol Nidre ושרי וחרמי וקונמי וכינויי וכינוסי ושיבות. דין דרנה ותשתבנה ודאחרימנה פדיה סרנה איחרתנה והון כול הון sarna al nafshatana Yom Kippurim ze ad Yom Kippurim Abba Aleinu Litova Kulhon Icharatina Vihon Kulhon Yehon Sheran Shviti Vivitin Biteilin Umevutalin La Sharirin Virakayamin Nidrana La Nidre Ve'esarana La Esare Ushevuatana La Shavut
Page 19. Let our speech be pure and our promises sincere. Let our spoken words, every vow and every oath, be honest and well-intentioned. Let our words cause no pain, bring no harm, and never lead to shame, distrust, or fear. And if, after honest effort, we are unable to fulfill a promise, a vow, or an oath, may we be released from its obligation and forgiven for our failure. Let our speech be pure and our promises sincere. Page 20.
Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidarecha. Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha.
We turn to page 22 and we remain standing for the Baruch Hu.
Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed, leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
We're seated together. And I just want to invite all of those who are part of the family service, you can head out right now and head into the chapel for services continuing with Roddy Pressman.
And for those of us staying in here, we turn to page 25. Day and night are yours, creative spirit of the universe, the muted colors of twilight, the radiance of dawn. Yours are the spreading wings of light, the deepening shadows of darkness, and ever-changing drama. In the human heart, too, the struggle between darkness and light unfolds. From sunlit heights of generosity, the human heart sinks to the gloomy depths of selfishness. Although we fall, you give us the strength to rise again. You call on those who hurt through word or deed to break free from wrongdoing and return to you. All who hear your call to goodness are embraced. All who reject emptiness and evil find acceptance from you. We come into your presence this night of Kol Nidre, aware that our shortcomings and weaknesses are many. Yet encouraged by your promise of forgiveness, we choose freely the path of repentance, restoring wholeness to our lives and holiness to the world. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim.
Amen.
Page 26.
We join together, Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת, אותנו לימדת. על כן, אדוני אלוהינו בשכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, נגה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Love beyond all space and time. Your love enfolds your people, Yisrael. We receive it in your teaching, your gift of Torah, sacred obligations, discipline, and law. So let us speak these teachings when we lie down and rise up and find joy forever in your Torah and mitzvot. They are the very essence of our lives, ours to ponder and study all our days. May we never lose or be unworthy of your love, for you are blessed, the one who loves your people, Israel.
ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
In ancient times, when the temple still stood, when the smoke of incense and sacrifices hung in the Jerusalem air, we knew how to pronounce the ineffable name of God. And once a year, on Yom Kippur, the high priest would speak it aloud, just him alone, and just on that one day. And on that day, with God's name still ringing in the people's ears, they would proclaim, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. We don't know God's name anymore. That's why we have so many metaphors that we use. But once a year on Yom Kippur, in our Mikdash Me'at, our own miniature temple, we keep that ancient tradition alive. We proclaim these words aloud as part of our Shema. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Page 28.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
Continue together, page 30.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 40. Witnesses to this heroic might, the people thanked and praised God by name, freely accepting the rain of heaven. Then Moses and Miriam and all Israel sang to you this song of utter joy.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורות עילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זלינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי ודע אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 43. When fears multiply and danger threatens, when sickness comes, when death confronts us, it is God's blessing of shalom that sustains us and upholds us, lightening our burden, dispelling our worry, restoring our strength, renewing our hope, reviving us.
ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורס אוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Page 45. For on this day atonement shall be made for you to purify you from all your wrongs, and pure you shall be in the presence of Adonai.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר אתכם.
Please rise.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, בעלמא תברך ידותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב וימרו. יהי שמי רבה מבוא יתברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך, וישתבח, ויתפאר מה ויתעשה, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמד קודשה בריחו לעילה ולעילה, מכל פלחתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירה וירימה וימרו.
We remain standing.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Together.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול הגיבור והרונה, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם, למען ישבו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם מזרעת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הדל. מחיי כל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
Page 53. You are holy, your name is holy. Seekers of holiness praise you day by day. Selah. I mentioned on Rosh Hashanah that word Selah, we don't totally know what it means, but scholars think that it meant strike up the band. So in ancient days, as the Psalms were recited, you would hear that, and the Levites would come in full-throated singing. And so it's become our custom, starting on page 53, to strike up the band of us. We're going to join together with just the word uvechein and therefore, and do a series of prayers that spell out many of the major themes of this High Holy Day season. Awe, creatureliness, the idea of God's transcendence. And we'll join together as an undercurrent. You'll hear if you've never done this before. We're pretty seasoned over these 5 years in doing this ritual. And hear this prayer as we carry ourselves melodically through. Again, middle of page 53. Everyone together. So in your holiness, give all creation the gift of awe. Turn our fear to reverence. Let us be witnesses of wonder, perceiving all nature as a prayer come alive. We bow to the sovereignty of your strength, the primacy of your power. We yearn for connection with all that lives, doing your will with wholeness of heart. Awe-inspiring is your creation, all-encompassing your transcendent name. Together. Praise you, bless with hope those who seek you. Give your believers a basis for faith, true happiness for the land of Israel, true joy in Jerusalem. May the sparks of David, your servant, soon grow bright enough for us to see a beam of light in the darkness, a promise of perfection. The gift of a vision bright with joy, a world where evil has no voice, and the rule of benevolence fades like wisps of smoke. Good people everywhere will celebrate the stunning sight of arrogance gone from the earth. Page 58. You and you alone, Adonai, will reign over creation. Upon Mount Zion, home of your presence, and in Jerusalem, a city set apart by you. As the psalmist believed, Adonai will reign eternally, your God Zion, for all generations. Hallelujah.
Kadosh אתה ונורא שמך אבין אלוה מבלעדיך צבאות במשפט והאל הקדוש נקדש בצדקה
Continue in silence through page 81, and you can be seated when you're finished.
As you let your prayers continue to flow and mingle with all those souls around you, sending deeply out and inward their own prayer, we offer this prayer for peace. Page 78.
Shalom ra al Yisrael lamecha tasim leolam. Shalom ra al Yisrael lamecha tasim. כי אתה הוא מלך אדון, לכו לך שלום. כי אתה הוא מלך אדון, לכו לך השלום וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. בספר חיים ברכה ושלום, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה, ברכה ושלום, ונזכר וניגטף לפניך, אנחנו וכל עם בית ישראל, לחיים טובים ולשלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
We've now reached the Vidui section of our service, the confessional section. And in a moment, we're going to rise and we're going to get a chance to say a set of prayers that speak out loud any number of sins. Now, for many of us, we may read this set of prayers and some of them may not apply, and that's fine. But the reason we do this together is because there is a sense in Judaism of communal responsibility. The idea is that when one person in our community fails, we may not be guilty, but a piece of us is responsible. And so thus, I invite you as you read these prayers to ask yourself not just whether you've done this, but whether you've done everything you can to keep those around you from falling short in these ways as well. We rise together, page 82. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence. And when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong.
Ashamenu, Bagadnu, Gazanu, Dibarnu Dofi, Evinu, Veirshanu, Zadenu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu Sheker, Yatsnura, Kizavenu, Latsnu, Maradnu, Niatsnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Oref, Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu.
remain standing, page 86.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזדון ובשגגה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדיבור פה.
Together, the ways we have wronged you deliberately and by mistake, and the harm we have caused in your world through words of our mouth.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בטיפשות פה.
The ways we have wronged you by hardening our hearts, and the harm we have caused in your world through careless speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובכזב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and the harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפלילות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזלזול הורים ומורים.
The ways we have wronged you by judging others unfairly, and the harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזידוי פה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהונאת רע.
The ways we have wronged you through insincere apologies, and the harm we have caused in your world by mistreating a friend or neighbor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחוזק יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במשא ובמתן.
The ways we have wronged you through violence and abuse, and the harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business.
מעל כולם מלוא הסליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו כפר לנו.
For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, and lead us to atonement.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגלוי ובסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפריקת עול.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretively, and the harm we have caused in your world by losing self-control.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במאכל ובמשתה.
The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and the harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנשך ובמרבית.
The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and the harm we have caused in your world through greed and exploitation.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנטיית גרון.
The ways we have wronged you through cynicism and scorn, and the harm we have caused in your world through arrogant behavior.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשנאת חינם, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בטומאת שפתיים.
The ways we have wronged you by hating without cause, and the harm we have caused in your world through offensive speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלשון הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצרות עין.
The ways we have wronged you with a slanderous tongue, and the harm we have caused in your world through a selfish or petty spirit.
מעל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו כפר לנו.
For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו כפר
We're seated briefly as we turn to page 96.
Let our needs rise up with the darkness, our cries with the rays of the sun. All day our praise is before you, songs of joy and bliss till evening comes.
One more verse, one more.
Together on page 100.
God of forgiveness, we come before you in need of compassion. At Sinai, you spoke words that guide our lives to this day, but our ancestors lost faith in you. lost hope in their Redeemer. With one voice they had promised, "We will do and obey," and yet, stiff-necked, they broke their word, adoring an idol of gold. How wondrous your compassion in the face of their rebellion, your forgiveness in that moment of human weakness and doubt. We too have broken promises to you. We too worship the work of our own hands. We too make of gold a god, and we too forsake your word. At Sinai, you revealed 13 attributes of mercy. These aspects of your nature, your very essence, we now recall.
We rise together.
Adonai, Adonai, el rachum v'chanun, erech hapayim v'rov chesed ve'emet, noter chesed la'alafim, nase avon ba'fesha v'chata.
We remain standing, page 104.
Our God and God of our fathers, God of our mothers, do not abandon us, leaving us in shame. Do not dissolve the covenant you made with us. Rather, draw us near to your teaching. Show us your ways and teach us how to live. Let us be open to your love, ready to revere your very being. Cut away the hardness of our hearts, so that we may turn to you with all our heart's devotion, truly repentant. For the sake of your great name, pardon our failures, forgive our moral weakness, as in the holy words of your psalmist, Adonai, as befits your name, forgive my sin, no matter how great.
Page 106.
כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו קהליך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו שונאיך ואתה אוהבינו, אנו קרבך ואתה עדותנו, אנו גבורתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דודנו, אנו סגורתך ואתה קרובנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו מאמיריך ואתה מאמירנו.
We remain standing, page 114.
אבינו מלכנו שמה קולנו,
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
אבינו מלכנו חטאנו לפניך,
Join with me. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
אבינו מלכנו חמול עלינו ועל עוללינו וטפנו,
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our families.
אבינו מלכנו קל דבר וחרב ורב מעלינו,
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
אבינו מלכנו קרא כל צר ומסתיר מעלינו,
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר חיים טובים,
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
אבינו מלכנו חדש עלינו שנה טובה,
Avinu Malkeinu, renew us for a year of goodness.
אבינו מלכנו מלא ידינו מברכותיך,
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
אבינו מלכנו הרם קרן משטרך,
Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption.
אבינו מלכנו, נעל תשיבנו ריקה מלפניך.
Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing.
אבינו מלכנו, קבל ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו.
Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it.
אבינו מלכנו, עשה עמנו למען שמך.
Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us as befits your name.
אבינו מלכנו, עשה למענך, אם לא למעננו.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours.
אבינו מלכנו, אין לנו מלך אלא אתה.
Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign.
אבינו מלכנו, פתח שערי שמיים לתפילתנו.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו, חוס ורחם עלינו.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion.
אבינו מלכנו, חננו ועננו, כן בנו מעשים, מעשה עמנו צדקה וחסד, והושיענו.
Avinu Malkeinu, mighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו. אבינו מלכנו, חטאנו לפניך. אבינו מלכנו, חמול עלינו, ועלול עלינו, ויטפנו. אבינו מלכנו, אבינו מלכנו, כותבנו בספר חיים טובים. אבינו מלכנו, חדש עלינו, חדש עלינו, שנה טובה. אבינו מלכנו, חדש עלינו, שנה טובה. אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו, שמע קולנו, שמע קולנו.
We are seated. Thank you, Leslie.
Gemar Chatzima Tova. Everyone can hear me okay? Can I have actually a little bit more? I feel like I'm straining. Is that okay? Thanks. Moses was a great leader, but he struggled as a husband. And the reason was that Moses was a workaholic. It was his Achilles heel. There are multiple stories, both in the Talmud itself and in later collections of Midrashim, that speak about his challenge with balance. The most famous involves a scene where Moses, after leading the people out of Egypt, crossing the Red Sea and bringing the people to the foot of Mount Sinai, finds himself completely exhausted by the task of caring for the Israelite community. We find him sitting all day as people approach him with their problems, lines of questioners around the block, asking for his counsel, his advice, his rulings. He's so busy, he doesn't have time to even go to the bathroom. This happens day in and day out. Finally, observing his son-in-law about to collapse, his father-in-law Jethro confronts him, quote, "The thing you are doing is not right. You will surely wear yourself out, and these people as well. For the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone." Jethro begs Moses to delegate. Find judges who can settle these people's disputes. Only deal with the hard questions that they can't. Quote, "Make it easier for yourself by letting them share the burden with you." Jethro then finishes with one more piece of advice. Finding a little balance in your life is good for everyone, he implies. Although you think you're doing a good job, you're actually dropping the ball. People may not come to you because they don't want to have to wait in line, or they may not believe you're ruling because they feel like you're too rushed. And if God calls, do you really think you're going to have the ability to shift focus and answer God? Moses listens, and he sets up the first court system in Jewish history. Now, I wish I could say that Moses does a good job in that moment of pivoting, but that's not how addictions work. Workaholism is woven into his DNA. In fact, this fact of his personality is one of the reasons that, according to our ancient rabbis, Moses was actually chosen to lead the people in the first place. There's a famous folk story that God chose Moses as the savior of the Jewish people because one day, before his calling, he was tending to sheep, and one of them broke free and escaped. Telling his attendant to stay with the flock, Moses went after that single sheep. God saw he cared for this little creature and appeared to Moses in the burning bush, ready to let him carry his creatures across the Red Sea. Now, most people tell the story of the sheep gone astray to show that Moses had compassion, how he cares about the individual sheep over the flock, and that might be true. Or Moses just might be type A. He might be the ancient equivalent of the person who stays late at the office, who takes the 11 p.m. phone call, who skips the soccer game for the meeting. So it should come as no surprise that later in Moses' story, we actually get a glimpse of his home life. Commentators throughout the centuries have written about Moses' wife, Zipporah. They've remarked on the fact that Moses is so busy talking with God throughout his 40 years in the desert that he has no time for his wife. Something they imagine pains her greatly. In fact, they write, Moses even pulls away from her when he isn't directly talking with God, just to keep his schedule clear in case God needs him. Work is endless. And even if you delegate, as Moses does after his encounter with his father-in-law, he finds a way to expand it in other ways. He spends less time judging, but then he doubles down on his encounters with the divine. Moses is sick, and so are many of us. We're currently living through maybe the most important conversation around work and boundaries since the 40-hour work week was instituted in the late 1930s. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from the pandemic is that work must be sustainable. People are now working more from home, commuting less, taking more flexible time. People are questioning whether our current work culture is sustainable, with over half of all workers actively shopping around their professional networks, looking for a new job. In fact, 2020 gave birth to a host of movements that have taken the working world by storm. We are, quote, quiet quitting, meaning doing only what is asked of us and setting the firmest of boundaries. I've seen dozens of books and podcasts that warn against trying to get any kind of fulfillment from one's career or from making friends with coworkers. They advise that a job is simply a way to make money. Coworkers are simply the people that you do your job with. Neither should play a part in your identity. There's a reason that the premise of the Apple TV Plus show Severance has taken people by storm. In it, society figures out how to completely sever a person's consciousness in two. One can turn on their work selves or their home selves, each with their own memories, friendships, or personalities. And one cannot tap into the other. There is no way to take your work home with you because you have no idea when you leave work how you spent your day. Now, I'm not surprised by this radical turn. Culture change sometimes requires that we swing the pendulum far to the extreme end of a spectrum, only to eventually find our way back. And this newfound approach to work is a huge culture change. But the funny thing is that while these new attitudes are true for some, in our congregation, many of us, me included, never lost our obsession with work. The pandemic just helped us find a way to sometimes do it in our slippers. There are no shortage of reasons why many of us still struggle with work addiction. One important factor revolves around the absence of community in so many of our lives. A generation or two ago, our relationships were diversified. We had home and work, but we also had clubs and volunteer opportunities and neighborhood associations. You, by being here, actually buck the trend in that you have religion as a source of connection. Most Americans don't. But with so many fewer options, the ones that we do have become all the more important. And since work relationships need to be earned, we invest heavily in our professional successes, hoping that the respect that we receive at the office will turn into the personal admiration that we're missing in our lives. Now, one would think that the tightening of our social networks would also emphasize time with family, but one doesn't always lead to the other. That's in part because work is actually easier. Work has stresses, yes, but usually we walk into work and we get the feedback that we are smart, capable, useful. That's not always the case at home. There's a modern Hebrew adage, actually borrowed from the New Testament, Ein nasi v'ein navi b'veito. Quote, there is no prince and there is no prophet in one's house. You might have reached the highest echelons of professional success, but even the most successful people in life are crippled by a 3-year-old's tantruming or grow rageful at a 13-year-old's eye roll. I generally know what to do as a rabbi. I'm flying blind as a parent. When our personal lives make us feel inadequate, work becomes the helpful escape. Then there's the general anxiety that many people feel about not living up to generational expectations. In America, traditionally, every generation has done better than the last until this current generation. A large percentage of us, especially those who are younger, might make less money, live in smaller houses, have less retirement than our parents. Especially for the middle class, things are just harder. Now, we can accept that, or we can engage in the Sisyphean task of trying to change that, forcing ourselves to work overtime to make up for the barriers that society has put in our way and for an ever-diminishing bite at the American dream. And sadly, the internet doesn't help. People don't post about how miserable they are at work. They tell stories about their successes, their promotions, their new opportunities. Most of us aren't doing much worse than the average worker, But our Facebook feed won't tell us that. Our social networks are all too often making us feel like unless we sprint, we will continue to be left behind. All of these are sociological factors that lead to harmful attitudes about work. But one reason we may not have considered is that workaholism is woven into the very fabric of the Jewish tradition. Think for a minute about what the Torah says about work. Adam and Eve are living blissfully in the Garden of Eden with everything laid out before them. Then they eat the forbidden fruit, and God kicks them out of paradise. And what is one of the key punishments that they face? Quote, "Cursed be the ground because of you. By hard labor you shall eat of it. All the days of your life thorns and thistles shall sprout from it. But your food shall be the grasses of the field. By the sweat of your brow shall you get bread to eat." In other words, God tells us that work is going to be hard and miserable. It is going to dominate your life, and you won't get a break. Now, for 3,000 years, no one seemed to question that wisdom. Even the advent of Shabbat didn't really do justice. It might give us a day off a week, but we can't really manage ourselves the other 6 days, then we're in trouble. What we need to find is balance. Some middle ground between workaholism and the newfound movement that simply goes through the motions at work. And to do that, we have to go back and to revisit some of those root causes of why our society struggles in the first place with enacting boundaries. And for now, I'm going to give you two. The first thing we need to do is reinvest in relationships. One of the great Jewish thinkers of the 20th century, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, wrote in his book, Lonely Man of Faith, about the fact that human beings have two distinct urges. The first is called the majestic urge, and it's the desire to build, to own, to conquer, to excel. It's what pushes us to get promotions, to work on our brand, to succeed. Though important, it's only half of what makes us us. The other urge he calls the covenantal urge, and that's the part of us that wants to be seen, loved, known. Think about these two urges as muscles. If you've ever worked out, you know it's a lot easier to work a muscle that's already strong. Our society excels at the majestic part of ourselves, but has let key pieces of our covenantal selves atrophy. So we keep doing what we're good at, and we let the weaker part of ourselves grow ever weaker by the day. We need to reinvest in people so that work holds less weight in our lives. You may be thinking that I'm going to ask you to get more involved in TNT, and that may help. But so will joining clubs, spending time on the phone with your relatives, taking days off to do meaningful things with your kids. As strange as it sounds, you should double down on the things that you have no time for. And you will watch as your priorities fall into place. Fulfilled in other ways, work will organically shrink. The second thing that we need to do is be okay with enough. The hard thing about work is that it's endless. There's always more to do. Our ancestors understood this well. One of the most famous complaints about work appears in the Mishnah when Rabbi Tarfon bemoans, "The day is short, the work is plentiful, the laborers are indolent, the reward is great, and the master of the house is insistent." His solution, quote, "It's not your job to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." We have to work, but we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to do and be everything. If you're like me, it gives you heart palpitations to think of, quote, not finishing the work. But Judaism is clear. You are allowed to fall short, provided that you have sufficiently tried. I was once given a piece of advice from a friend. Raised in a world like many of you, where it felt like a failure to get a B in school, we need to reframe what it means to get a B. B does not stand for an absence of an A. It's an abbreviation for a better life. Now that's easier said than done. Saying no and boundary making comes with costs. You will have to drop balls. You will anger and frustrate coworkers. You will not be the center of everything. And that means letting go of control, which feels really good. But in setting boundaries, you won't be Moses. I often think about the tragedy of Moses' death. He gave his whole life to leading the people through the desert, only to end up on the wrong side of the Jordan River, unable to make it to the promised land with them. And sadly, if you read the tone and tenor of his death speeches in the book of Deuteronomy, he actually sees the arc of his life as a failure. He had a wife, kids, family. He brought the people the Torah. He saved hundreds of thousands of lives from Egyptian bondage, but he couldn't see it. At work, you are only as good as your next project, and he was fired before he could see that project through. I believe Moses would still be Moses, even if he gave a little less to his work. And so will we. Perhaps even better versions of ourselves. Gamar Chatima Tova.
It's not going to be easy to figure it out, but maybe it starts with compassion. Kirachem av al banim, like a really compassionate parent upon their children. I will hold you and guide you as you face all the ways in which it's hard.
Kirachem av al banim, richam Adonai al Yirach, ki higvu l'shamayim al haaretz, gevar hasto Kirachem av al banim, richam Adonai al Yirach, ki higvo hashamayim al haaretz, gavar chasto al
We all rise as we are able. Turn to page 116 as we begin to conclude our service with Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand, but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
ונאמר והי אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד.
We are seated. A poem before Kaddish by Alden Solovoy. When God in creating began to create, silence hovered over the face of the deep, and God said, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah. Holiness has a sound, part swoosh of blood in the veins, part hum from the edge of the universe, part stillness, just vibration, part life entering a newborn, part life leaving the deceased, part dissonance, part resonance, a sound that can only be heard with the heart. When God in creating began to create, God spoke to music, giving us the shofar, as a vessel to hold the divine voice, and as an instrument to summon awe and wonder, so we might become in our own lives and in the world, Tekiah Gedolah. If you are in your week of mourning, I ask that you please rise and say the name of your loved one. If you are in Shloshim, in the 30 days after the death of a loved one, please rise. If you're in the year of mourning, please rise and say the name of your loved one. Max Renteria. And if you're observing a yard site today and you'd like to share the name of your loved one, please do. Clem Litwin. We remember all those with love, and I ask the whole community to rise in solidarity with those who are in mourning and taking into our hearts all who we remember and whose memories will be forever a blessing as we recite the words of Mourner's Kaddish together on page 122. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah b'alma divrach yirutei v'mich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'gala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei d'kudusha b'richu, le'ela u'le'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Da'amiran ve'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. You may be seated.
So it's my pleasure now to call up the president of our congregation, Marty Baum, for some words of welcome and a few announcements.
Thank you, Rabbi Katz. We are now in a period known as the Days of Awe. It is a time for genuine introspection, a time to consider the mistakes of the previous year and reflect how we might want to do better. At the same time, though, we also need to consider where these thoughts and good intentions may lead. It makes me think of a quote from one of the past century's greatest observers of human behavior and a longtime Montclair resident by the name of Yogi Berra. He wisely observed that if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. So my question to all of us as individuals and as congregants are, where are we going? And how will we know when we get there, as opposed to someplace else? You might not be aware, but several years ago, a vision statement was developed for the temple, and it was to create a community that is curious, connected, and just. That sounds good, right? I mean, there's not much to object to. But I asked myself and our community, what does that statement really mean? And perhaps more importantly, how do we get there? To quote another famous New Jerseyan, Thomas Edison, vision without execution is just hallucination. Although we have taken a shared vision of being curious, connected, and just, the path to get there will take many different forms. Let me first take a step back. As Nancy Saraysky discussed during Rosh Hashanah services last week, we recently completed a comprehensive study of our congregation, which quantified many aspects of this wonderful community. As I mentioned during my comments on Erev Rosh Hashanah, we are diverse and vibrant, like our beautiful stained glass wall, a mosaic in many different ways. Some members come from more traditional backgrounds, but a third of our members are actually interfaith families. Nearly 30% attend worship monthly or more, but half attend services just during the high holy days. Over a third of our families have children in the 6th grade or below, yet about 30% are self-identified as senior citizens. Now, what that means is that being curious, connected, and just can and will be different things to different people. It will involve multiple unique paths as we work forward as both individuals and as a community to reaching that vision. Now, some of you know I'm fond of saying that people do not join a synagogue and then belong. They belong and then they join. And that's what makes our community so special. My family's connection began when my oldest son started at preschool at Shoresh. But that was over 20 years ago, and we're still here. So take a minute, if you could, and think about your initial connection, how it may have changed over time, and perhaps where it is going in the future. Now, chances are what brought you here in the first place is not what keeps you here today. We change and we grow as individuals and families, so our needs evolve as well. And we are fortunate to provide so many entry points for our belonging of this community. It might be spiritual, it might be intellectual, perhaps worship-related, or focus on the community or social justice. But no matter where you began and where you are today, this is your home where you are connected and you belong. One example I want to share is the fantastic work that Cantor Greenberg led this past year with the Peace Project. She championed a spiritual and real-world connection between TNT and a small outpost of progressive Judaism facing significant challenges in the faraway land of Tbilisi, Georgia. Journalists brought their struggle to light and frankly could have shared this opportunity with any number of synagogues. Instead, she came to TNT. Why? She knew our community was open-minded and curious and assumed, rightly so, of course, that we would be responsive and excited about this undertaking. We established connection as Cantor gathered volunteers for teaching and chanting with students in Tbilisi. In fact, we had more teachers than we had students. Then, more than a dozen congregants traveled across the world to make a connection with a distant land and a people in person. And finally, we knew the cause was just, providing frontline assistance to a small outpost of progressive Judaism existing in the face of oppression. And that experience and commitment is powerful and it's unique. However, it's just one path and merely an illustration of who we are and who we can be as individuals and collectively as a community. I have another story to share. This is from one of our own members. He writes about the importance of TNT in his family life, the importance of making sure our community continues. He writes, and I quote, "Whenever we go to visit my father's gravesite, we leave a small pebble on the tombstone. There are a variety of explanations as to the origin of this custom, but for most, it is a sign of remembrance and of lasting permanence and legacy. Unlike flowers that wither, stones are permanent. For our family, TNT is the stone that we want to ensure is here forever. A legacy for and of the Jews in this area. In a word, where anti-Semitism is on the rise, the need to ensure permanency is ever more profound." During this solemn time of reflection and work toward improvement, perhaps each one of us can think about why we belong and what we each might do to be part of our enduring community, to be more curious, connected, and just. We open our minds with curiosity. We commit to growth as a community, and we seek a path for the new year that is just. It is upon us as individuals and as a community to create a path that meets our future challenges. Now, what do we need to strengthen our values and mission? We need you. Your support is invaluable, and we are grateful for all you do. Today, I ask that you consider a generous gift to the Temple's annual appeal, making all our endeavors possible. Inside the first page of your High Holiday prayer book, there are 3 easy ways to make a gift: online, via text, or scanning the QR code. I'm also pleased to say that we have a generous match for first-time donors to our appeal. The member whose story I just shared has offered to match first-time appeal gifts, dollar for dollar, for up to $10,000. He told us he wants us to encourage those who may not have given before to ensure our lasting legacy. If you have thought about giving, your gift today could really help us. For those who regularly give to the appeal, thank you for continuing your important support. We need all of us together. I sincerely appreciate your appeal gift and generous spirit. Thank you for joining me, your community, our temple. Thank you for sharing and stepping into 5784 and helping us on the journey to achieve the TNT vision of being curious, connected, and just. Gemar Chatima Tova, and may we all be inscribed in the book of life.
So before we move into our final song, just a few quick logistical announcements. Make sure to bring your prayer books up to the back. You can look in your packets to find all the different people who participated in tonight's service and make a point to thank them for their participation. Tomorrow morning, our main service begins at 10 o'clock. Our Biachad family services at 10:30 at Ridgemont Avenue School. Our teen service at... That's what I said. Oh, thank you. Ridgewood Avenue School. Our teen service at 10 a.m. Our tot service is at 2. A study session at the same time at 2 p.m. with our student rabbi, James Fader, who we met tonight, if you haven't met him yet, though he's been with us all year and has been an incredible asset throughout the year to our community. Our Yizkor services start at 3 p.m. with 4 p.m. afternoon services leading into Ne'ilah until sunset. With Sukkot around the corner, I just want to plug, we have a big Sukkot celebration on October 1st, a barbecue around lunchtime. Come join us for that. That's really the kickoff to the year. And we're going to be dancing with the Torahs on Church Street at Simchat Torah, 6 o'clock kids programming, 6:45 adults, October 7th. If you haven't yet brought food with you, make sure to fill a bag up at home. We're not providing bags this year because we assume everybody has bags they're looking to get rid of, though if you don't, come talk to us. Fill a bag with food. We'll bring it to the Human Needs Food Pantry or 2. So with that, we're going to close tonight. Return again, page 127.
Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to what? Return to what you are. Return to who you are. Return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your. Return to the land of your Hashivenu. Hashivenu. Adonai Elecha.
Return Gemar Chatima Tova.